Hello, I am Faye Kelly. I'm the author of our CareerWize coding course, and I am a CCS, and I'm also an AHIMA approved ICD-10 CM trainer.
Faye, how long have you been doing coding, and how did you get started?
Well, actually, I've been doing coding for over 30 years, so quite some time, and I got started. I had a neighbor who actually dragged me into the medical record department at our nearby hospital and said, I want you to apply for this job. So I applied for the job while trying to decide if I'm going to go and be an English high school teacher. And I went in, I applied for the job, I got the job in the medical record department, and within just a few weeks I was handed a book, and I can tell you what version of the book. I'm going to date myself here. It was an ICD-8 book. So that was back before ICD-9. I started with that. I learned ICD-8, and then ICD-9 came about, and MSDRGs, and I just kept growing and learning and actually loving the coding part of my job, actually loving it.
How cool is it that you kind of stumbled into something that you ended up loving?
It was, when I think about that, and I do think about it a lot, because I always wanted to teach, and I always wanted to teach high school students, and to think that didn't happen, but that Miss Kynes actually took me by the hand and brought me into this career. I mean, I don't even think when I was hired that she and I dreamed that I would be where I'm at today, that I would have grown with such a passion and loving what I was doing. I don't think either one of us could have laid out my life story the way it's been laid out. It is a true blessing in my life that I'm here. And it's just, when I think about this, and I think about the students that I have taught coding to, and I think about the students that I've worked with, I think about those potential students that I've talked to. I think about, I want to be that Miss Kynes to you. I want you to see what's out there. That, yeah, it's coding and you're doing this with a chart, but oh my goodness, the wide range view, to look ahead past just the coding is where I'm at, because I step back and I look at everything I've done. I started out as a coder. I was coding transcription. I was doing medical record assembly. I was doing it all, and then I was blessed to, within a year, be given the opportunity to be a director, and the facility put me through the classes, the college classes to take to get my credentials for medical records. I've always had someone in my corner, and Miss Kynes left. There was another lady that I think about, that her name was, we called her Miller Jones. And I remember when I was taking some of the courses, she would come around there and beat on my desk that I was going to finish, because I was like, this was killing me. This was a lot. But oh my goodness, look what life has brought by coding. Look what I've done, from the HIM coding, being the director. I never let go of the coding, so I always include the HIM coding. From being the consultant, that even during that time in my life, I went to different institutions and was consultants, and there's just so much out there that you can do. It's phenomenal.
One of the things that's cool about this is your sense of legacy, of passing on the knowledge that you have in your head in order to help other people. So is that what inspired you to write the CareerWize course?
Absolutely. That's a large piece of it, because this course is the beginning of it's my beginning. It's what I had to have. I can't imagine someone not helping me, and I can't imagine someone not helping my children, and I can't imagine someone not helping my friends. And this course it's different. It's laid out different. You know, we have the coding piece of it, but then we start at the very foundation that makes a medical coder who they really are, from the anatomy and the physiology to the pharmacology, the medical terminology, the health data management. What does a chart look like? I mean, we have this course gives you, I mean, it's like sitting in the actual office to some degree. You know, you don't have all the noise and everything, but you're actually looking at this course, and when you get into the real world, you're like, I've seen that, I know that. This course is what I'm about and what I can do to help anyone to further their education, to further their career, to be what they want to be in life. So yeah, it is. It's a lot about my passion for what someone helped me to do. Why can't I pass it down?
Yeah. And can you speak a little bit about, you know, all the changes to the industry? You started out in ICD 8, you're now ICD 10. And so it's like, you know, 3 coding languages that you've had to learn and figure out. But
Exactly.
but what are the you know, kind of the, can you talk about the big changes that you've seen in the industry as
Oh, absolutely. When I first started coding, it was just, here's a book code. It was mainly used for statistical data, probably. It wasn't reimbursement driven. It was so the government could capture how many newborns may be born cesarean section versus any other method, or how many pneumonias you have in this certain county. It was more statistical, and that's still such a huge piece of this. But the other piece is that as the 80s approached, MSDRG came into play. When MSDRG came into play, a coder stood out, because that MSDRG is the reimbursement for your facility. Okay, so this is hospital coding. In the outpatient world, it's APCs. Still, the coder stands out now because the coder drives the reimbursement. So, you know, we went from just coding to make numbers on the chart and report to actually being, you need the education. You know, when you're in this coding field, your employer is backing you up. They're making sure you're getting education and making sure that you're everything you need to be if they're doing their job, because continuing education is part of any institution. So, yeah, and then a couple of years ago, we went from ICD-9. ICD-8 to ICD-9 wasn't a big change. It was a change, but it wasn't huge. When we went to ICD-10, that was like apples and oranges. The diagnosis piece is relatively similar and easy. It's a lot more detailed and a lot more comprehensive, but the actual PCS coding, there's nothing like it. So it's just been a tremendous change, and I heard so many people in the field saying, I'm retiring when ICD-10 comes. Well, that's the challenge. You've got to step up to the challenge. It's not time to retire. And I can bet if those that stuck with it, because I know how I feel about it, it's not the nightmare that people put out there that it would be. I mean, you could read articles on how hard it was. It's not easy. It wasn't meant to be easy. It's meant to be comprehensive and detailed. That's why the coder is so important and valuable. That's why the salaries are what they are in the coding field. That's why the credentials are important as they are. It's just, there's such a key role in any institution, outpatient, inpatient, consultant field. I don't care where they go in this career. They are important.
Can you talk about, one of the things I've learned from getting to know you is that there's an importance of being intellectually curious. And what does it take, right? To be a good coder, you got to be intellectually curious, not just to advance your career and try different fields, but within an individual code, as you're coding a record.
Right.
Can you talk about the role of curiosity as it relates to being a coder?
Yeah. Sure. As a coder, I've never been satisfied with just, okay, this is the code that goes with this diagnosis. And I guess some of that has really played a part in my life, because as I've had family members diagnosed with certain diseases, I actually understood it more than just give me a diagnosis and let me interpret what that means for you. I'm a YouTube type coder. I actually take my diagnosis or my procedure, whatever it is. I remember when my dad was diagnosed with lung cancer, and it wasn't enough for me to know the codes or to know what that doctor is talking about. I actually wanted to know that right and that left lung and the different lobes. I wanted to understand it. And in coding, that's important. And then you can relate it down to personal, like I just did with my dad. But when you're coding that chart and you're seeing that the cancer is in the mediastinum, where is the mediastinum? Well, yeah, you can do a Google. You can certainly do the dictionary and get that, but you can also go into YouTube and get it explained to you, because there's physicians on YouTube that speak to you and actually tell you where the mediastinum is, what part it plays, and then when they do that surgery and you want to see exactly where they're talking about so that you can better understand if there is a surgery with a stent. Let's say we're kind of skipping over here now. Let's say there's a stent going to be placed and you want to know exactly where. Well, YouTube has exactly, a lot of times you can even YouTube for a procedure in ICD-10 PCS and get that. But when you can't, you can YouTube for the procedure, and then you can actually see, and it's kind of a confirmation that the code that you're assigning and the chart that you're reading matches up. So you become round, complete circle, where you're not just assigning a code. The next time that chart comes up and you're having to decide which character to apply for the approach or what type of stent that is, because a lot of times you've got to know what type of stent that is. Don't just stop with a definition. Take it further. Get familiar with what that procedure is, so that as it's coming, especially if you're a specialty coder, as it's coming more and more in the door and out the door every day and you're coding those charts, you can actually learn what it is and know what it is, and you can speak to it when you have a question to the physician. If you have a question without the knowledge, words can get crossed. You might not get that correct code because you're not knowledgeable enough to know what to ask. But if you're knowledgeable to know what to ask, then he respects that. You respect yourself even more, and you get the correct code. So yeah, I'm not just going to stop with my Google medical dictionary. I want my students to I want them to YouTube it. I want them to understand to the best extent possible what procedure, if they're having difficulty coding.
And that's important because it makes sure that the record is good for the patient, and then it's also, if it's good for the patient, it ends up being really good for the doctor if the proper codes are in there.
That's right.
If you can code correctly, how critical is that to a doctor? Why would a doctor want the best coder they can get?
Reimbursement.
Right.
And statistics. You don't want your stats showing up on your physician profile incorrectly. And physician profiles are big nowadays. So for that physician coder that's working for Dr. ABC, it's important to him that you assign the right codes so that his patients are displayed properly and his treatments are displayed properly. And then for that facility, the reimbursement, the stats, if you're not coding correctly and you code a complication of a procedure, what if you code that the patient had complications post-op due to an incidental finding, or you can misconstrue the codes where it looks like the physician's going to really be upset that you've coded that he had a post-op complication. So you do have post-op complications, and you do have to code them sometimes, but you want to make sure that you know that this is a true post-op complication and you're not just coding something that shouldn't be. Because, for example, there's a lot of diagnoses that might be part of the post-op stay that are not complications. Those are expected outcomes. So you don't want to go in and code that. So it's not just sitting down to a code book. It's so interesting. Yeah. It is.
And, if you had, obviously your life has been changed by doing medical coding. You've been able to take it where you've wanted to take it. You're now a consultant. You've now authored this course. You've got all these different places that you've gone with medical coding. But for those who are just starting or interested in medical coding, what sort of advice would you give to somebody beginning?
First of all, I want them to make their mind up. I want them to be sure, everything has a beginning. Is this the beginning that you want? Once you decide that this is the field that you want, then you have to start with a coding course. And I want you to start with a course that provides you with more than just, here's a code book, let's learn how to code so that we can pass this exam. I want you to start with a course that gives you everything you need to be the best you can be so that you can grow in this field. And that is what we do. And we're giving them all that background. We're giving them that exposure to what the real world looks like. So I want them to get into a course that gives them the in-depth knowledge that will take their career to heights that they might not even think about right now. But they've got to start, and they've got to be prepared to study and be diligent. Don't just sit down and write your numbers and code and get through a course. That's not going to work. It may work just to pass a test, but it won't work to excel in your career and be more than you can be and will be.
And I guess to add to that, enthusiasm, how do you install enthusiasm into, how do you find enthusiasm for the things that you approach?
I think you know it. I think that you just know. It's like anything else that we do in life. When I first was given this book back in the day, I knew, wow, this is interesting. This is something that I'd never seen a code book before. But the enthusiasm is something that you have from within. And even in those moments when you're going, this is so hard, you got to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And that's what the coding is, and I guess coding is the light at the end of the tunnel, because when you finish that, that's when you step off into a different horizon and just become so much of what you should be, need be, can be. It's just everything wrapped up. The enthusiasm is from within your heart. I find that when I talk about anything with coding, and I talk to students and I talk to potential students, I just want to say that it's a love, it's a passion, and it's something that once you start it, you will not want to stop growing and learning. And there's so many fields out there that when you learn it, that's it. It's not that way. You just keep growing and you just keep learning, and that's where the enthusiasm comes from, because it's ever growing.
Okay, last one. To map out, you wanted to become a consultant. Okay,
yes, I did.
There came a point where you wanted to be a consultant. I don't know if this is when you were a coding supervisor, if this was when you were working at the nursing home. I don't know what stage did that happen.
That's a good question. I'm glad you asked that, because working in the medical record department, I was exposed to a lot of the different environments, your pharmaceutical reps. But I mean, they even came into the medical record departments. But we had a lot of salesmen and that would come around through our medical record department. And as HIM director, I met with these people. And I love to talk to people. I love to just hear what they have to say and learn more about them. And we had some salesmen that were actually selling business for coding consultants. And we hired a couple of coding consultants. And I thought, that is so cool, because they were traveling. We didn't have the EMR like we do now, but they would travel and they would be, looking at our charts. We would set up a place for them. They would actually look at our charts. Let me say the other thing here. Consultants have to have the right attitude, because you have to love what you're doing, and you have to also realize that you're there for that client, that you're not in there to make Cherie, Daisy over here. You're not there to make them look bad. This isn't what it's about. It's another passion of mine, because yes, I had those auditors. They came in, and I did have one that was so negative. I never used that company again. But then I've had a couple throughout my career that I kept going back to, because they came in and they actually took my facility records, went through them, and then did the education at the end, taught my coders as if they were one of us. It wasn't derogatory. I mean, I know the report goes up the scale. I mean, I know it goes to the CFO, it goes to the board. That's okay. That's something that they deal with. As a coder, I'm more interested in that one-on-one from that consultant. But actually, exposure is how I learned about consulting. When you get your credentials, you become a member of whichever organization you're credentialed through. So you also read in there about the different fields to go into. To me, that reading is good, but the one-on-one of meeting the people. And so for these, maybe you're working from home and you'll never meet. That's why we're doing what we're doing, because there is more than just working from home.
Okay, so you decide you want to be a consultant, or let's say somebody wants to do anything in some sort of field. How do you map and get yourself from, okay, I'm a coder,
right,
and I know my code book,
right,
and I know and I'm certified through my organization, all that stuff, and I'm going to map my path to get to that end goal. So I'm a coder, now I'm going to
be a consultant?
Yeah, well, let's use that as an example. So
right.
So how do you map your way to that?
Well, it is truly a map, and I actually had a map in my mind back. It was probably really 7 or 8 years after I started coding that I started realizing I wanted to do more. There was a company out of California that was coding consultants. But see, I had small children. It wasn't time for me to start hopping on a plane and traveling. So I had to decide when it was right for me. So I did. I decided when our baby daughter graduated from college that it would be time for me to pursue this field. Sure. In the meantime, I pumped myself full of education. What the facility didn't give me, I got it on my own. And that's what you have to do. You have to decide when you want to do this, because it might not be something you can do in the next 5 years. Maybe you have that child at home that you need to wait till they graduate. And while they're graduating, you're educating. And you're just going to be better at what you do when you step out and hop on that plane or whatever you do for that consultant.
Okay. So you just learn the steps that it takes, what the education pieces are needed for it, and then you go get it. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not that hard.
No, it's not. I mean, you're just growing in your education. And that's through whatever organization that you're certified through. They're giving you opportunities to educate. And you take them up on it. You can't go to everything. You can't pay for everything. But you can do enough to keep your skills above and beyond the norm. And that's what I want these people to do, our students to do, is be above and beyond the norm.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.